Hello, and welcome to the Ball and All podcast. My name is Mpho Mutlani. I am the host of the Ball and All podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Mpho Moreki. Please do follow, and subscribe this podcast and the show on YouTube. And the link will be supplied in the in the comment section as well. Well, not necessarily the comment section, but in the tweets or the posts where on social media where this podcast goes out. It's also available on Anchor, so please do follow and subscribe. Liking and subscribing gets me into the algorithms where people now start following. Other people can get to follow and see and listen and comment. But please do also comment in the comment section on YouTube. That's what I was trying to get to when I meant in the comment section. This week, we're going to be talking about the Nets. They mean a lot of business. They've just come out of a Pacific Division road trip of note where they were really staking a claim. And that's something I'm going to be talking about. We'll talk about the All-Stars that were noted, and also a little bit of Andre Drummond news, where he could go and what's possible. And just talk about some other teams that have done well and haven't done well in the NBA so far. But I thought it was a perfect time for me to talk about the Nets. I talk about another team that's doing very well. They have a 9-game win streak in my Post-Up Zone article on postupzone.com. It's called the Utah Jazz. They've got a 9-game win streak. They've gone I think they've won 20 wins and 1 loss since the 6th of January. They've had a 11-game win streak, a loss, and another 9-game win streak. And that's currently going. They play the Clippers on Friday night, probably tonight when you're watching this. So that's going to be an interesting one to see how the Clippers do it again. They played the Clippers 2 nights ago. Didn't go well. Now it's obviously to see how they play the Clippers again. But let's get into the meat of what we wanted to discuss. The Nets, the Brooklyn Nets, they acquired James Harden. They have a big 3. They let go of Jared Allen, which I thought was a recipe for disaster. But they found a way to make it work, especially defensively. You could see that they're becoming a mid-level defensive side, a team, and that's pretty much all you need. You need to be middle of the road in order for you to be able to fight for the NBA championships. A lot of people are using the Cleveland Cavaliers example. Under LeBron, where they weren't an elite defending team, but they were middle of the road, which helped them get into the playoffs and also get them to the title I think it was in 2017. What we saw in this road trip, they went to Golden State. Kevin Durant came back and he played after he was placed under league protocol for isolation. He played against Golden State. They beat Golden State 134-117. Very clinical performance. Were very good against a Golden State team that's quite a strong defense. It's very strong defense. And then they moved on to the Kings. They played the Sacramento Kings. I think it was on Tuesday. They beat the Kings 136-125. The Kings are on pace to being the worst defense in NBA history, so nothing to write home about there. But in that game, it was, I think Kevin didn't play. It was just Kyrie and James Harden, and they did a lot of the work. Against the Suns, Kyrie didn't play. It was back-to-back. They decided to rest Kyrie, and James Harden stepped up, and he just put down a 40-piece, and they took it deep. I think the Suns led for most of the game up until the fourth quarter when James Harden took over and put the Suns away. But even then, the Suns' ability to close out games was really disappointing because they just couldn't finish at the rim all of a sudden in the fourth quarter. Yes, you could call it some good defense, and I'll tell you about who the good defenders are on the Brooklyn Nets team and how it's going to try and work with the KD. And then on the other end, they beat the Lakers this morning or last night. Very good performance. The Lakers didn't have Anthony Davis, who we know now has a calf strain, and he's going to be out for 4 weeks. So, and then on top of that, I thought maybe if Dennis Schroeder was there, he could help LeBron from a scoring perspective. Dennis Schroeder wasn't available today. He's under league protocol, so he's going to be out for a while. The Lakers played the Miami Heat on Saturday in a NBA Finals rematch. That was an interesting game today. Lakers from a defensive perspective were what as I expected. They've still made some stops and everything else, but I think the Brooklyn Nets were much better from that defensive end. But the big problem was with the Lakers is that obviously LeBron's your primary scorer. Who else is going to fill up the scoring and pad the stat sheet? Who's your number two? And I think today kind of gave everyone an answer that I think Kuzma can never be a number two. I don't even think he can be a number three. He can be a number three on some nights, not all nights. He's shooting really well, which is what we love. But in the non-LeBron rotations, you need Kyle Kuzma to step up. He wasn't stepping up. It was largely Montrezl Harrell trying to go through. You had KCP trying to make plays, Taylor Horton-Tucker trying to make plays, but it wasn't necessarily Kuz. Kuz was just sitting there catch and shoot. I love catch and shoot Kuz just as much as I love catch and shoot Melo of the catch and shoot Melo of Team USA when he was just catch and shoot. He wasn't the Melo that we all knew and loved in New York. And so, yeah, so it's something that the Lakers will do. I'd like to see both teams healthy. Kevin Durant wasn't playing, no AD, no Schroeder. So I'd like to see both teams. I think the Lakers might need to go into the market to talk about a center. But let's talk about the Nets and the guys I really like from a defense perspective. James Harden can defend. Like, I think he can. He can. We all know that. It's just that at times he obviously at Houston, because he's dropping 40, why are we making him defend? I think that was his thinking. But you could see at the top his hands were there. He was moving. Him and Kyrie did quite a good job at the top. And then you have then you also have Bruce Brown. I think Bruce Brown is a really, really great fit for them. I think he was picked up from Detroit. Yes, he was picked up from Detroit. Really great guy. Really good defender as well. Really defended well in the 4 spot and also the 5 spot at times. They like to use him and Green. They like to interchange, and I think Green is such a great pickup for the Nets. He can play that 5 if they want to play small ball. So they have some really great pieces. Tyler Johnson's also a really good defender. He can shoot 2, can shoot 3s. But the problem is obviously in your death lineup, if you've got KD, James, and Kyrie, who's going to fill up the other 2 spots? Yes, maybe Andre Drummond can come in, but in the final spots, Andre could be pulled out. He's not known to be a great perimeter defender, which is why Green kind of works for them. But I think they may need someone, for instance, if not Andre Drummond, if DeAndre Jordan, I beg your pardon, but if, for instance, Andre Drummond came into Brooklyn, that would be a probably different story. But even then, they'd have that issue. So that's what I think Steve Nash needs to figure out. But you kind of saw how the Brooklyn Nets are going to try and play in those minutes where they. And the great thing about having a 3-headed monster is that you can stagger your minutes and always have a primary scorer on the floor. And that's to a certain extent what the Lakers missed when they played the Nets, and that's what the Nets have. Sometimes if you're playing with the bench, it's Kyrie. Sometimes it's James Harden. Sometimes it might be a combination of the 2, not the 3. And that's what makes them such an intriguing prospect and something that's gonna be something that they're going to build on and cause teams a lot of trouble. If you look at the lay of the land in the NBA, we've got the All-Stars now selected. There's 5 teams that are really, really good. And then there's other teams that are like, you're like, okay, maybe they're good enough. They're playoff teams that can make it there, but everyone's like, okay. So like, for instance, the East, the 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets are very good sides. They've set themselves up. They are 1 and 2 in the East. And then from then on, I think the Bucks are on a 5-game losing streak. You could include them in that really, really good bracket. But for me, from Milwaukee, Indiana, Boston, Toronto, the Knicks, Charlotte were playing very good. The Bulls, the Hawks, and maybe even the Heat and the Magic. Those teams are okay. They're good sides. No one's actually putting up their hand to say, hey, I want this title. And if you look at the West, what you have is the 3 LA teams who are putting their hands up, and they're really playing some great basketball, and they've set themselves up. With the 2 LA teams and the Utah Jazz who are running away with this league. They're just playing some incredible basketball. Please do check out my my article. And then you've got the Trailblazers, the Phoenix Suns, the Spurs who are playing just some incredible basketball. They are punching above their weight. The Warriors, the Nuggets, who are in 8th, which is really surprising. The Grizzlies, the Mavericks, and you'd possibly even consider the Pelicans and the Kings. And if you wanted to still go down, because they're the Rockets and the Thunder are okay, but I think they're so far away from everyone else. But it's shaping up into a league where you've got like the 5 contenders who I've named: Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Jazz, LA, and LA, and then everyone else around them. And the question is, obviously, with this COVID, teams may have the ability to improve and get better and close out on those games that they've lost, and get into a playoff spot. But they can be the dark horses, just like how Miami was in the 5th seed. And I felt last year Miami were playing like a top 4 seed towards the back end of the season, even though the first half of the season, they're just trying to figure things out. And once they got Iguodala and they also got Jay Crowder, it kind of turned. And I think that's what we might get in this season. But so far, that's what it looks like. From an all-star perspective, the all-star starters were named. LeBron got the most votes, so I think he got 5 million votes. So in the West, and I think they're going to keep the West and East. In the West, it was LeBron. It was in the front court, it was LeBron, Jokic, and Kawhi. In the backcourt, it was Steph, and surprisingly, Luka Doncic. I thought Damian Lillard would make it in after the way he's playing. Portland's on a 6-game winning streak. I thought people would be coming through because of Portland doing so well so far. But Luka Doncic got in, probably because of the European vote. But Luka still, I think it was always between Dame and Luka won it. It still doesn't make, I think Dame was not going to scrap. He'll be at the All-Star game in Atlanta. And then from an East perspective, Bradley Beal finally makes it into the All-Star game. Remember, he was really, really angry. Well, he was angry that not making it. His girlfriend told the world that that we snubbed him. It was Beal, Kyrie Irving, who has been putting up some monster numbers. This Brooklyn team have now turned Kyrie into a shooting guard, which is like opened up a new level of the game for him. Harden brings the ball up, and Kyrie just sits, cuts, moves, stands there, gets the ball, and does what he does as the number 2, and it works. He's shooting better. He's getting better looks. Even the spacing has enabled him to drive a little bit better off the shoulder at times. And that's what I loved, I think, about this Nets offense. But Kyrie is there. I think he's averaging 28 points per game. And then you have in the front court, it's KD, Joel Embiid, who by all accounts with Nikola Jokic are my front runners for the MVP. They've done an incredible job, but I think Jokic, because of what's happening in Denver, them playing around with that 500 mark there, they're just a couple of games above 500. I think Joel Embiid might just end up getting it. Obviously, depending where Steph ends up with the Warriors, he might also come in. But Joel is a MVP candidate, and then Giannis is coming as well. The Bucks are there. The thing about the Bucks, and this is what I want to talk about, the Bucks are 5 games, have lost the last 5 games. In those 5 games, I think Drew Holiday hasn't played in those 5 games, and that's kind of something that's very intriguing. That obviously last season they didn't have Drew, and now this season they do, and without Drew they're just not winning. Something just doesn't feel right in Milwaukee. Giannis's mid-range shots aren't, well, like he can't shoot in the mid-range. He can only dunk, and his free throws aren't that great either way. And I know Bud's not worried about the free throws, but I would be if I was a coach, because he gets the fouls, and then he doesn't punish teams, and teams are much more willing to foul him and take the fouls. But he's still quite dominant as a scorer. It's just that it's not translating into wins for his team. And I think from a defensive end, he needs to stop being he needs to start guarding the most important player of the other team, the best player of the other team. He has to start doing that. And then just one other thing I'm going to be talking about is the Andre Drummond trade. Cleveland said they were on a 9-game losing streak. I said that I was buying them. I think in the last couple of episodes, I think it's time to start selling Cleveland. They've just gone back to who they were. But that's from a scoring perspective. And the Knicks have held on. The Knicks are there, and they're about 7th in the East. They're holding on. Cleveland have now dropped like a stone. The most fascinating team to watch is the Charlotte Hornets. I think they're a really, really great basketball team. They move the ball really well. If you love that type of basketball, the ball moving, the cutting, and everything else. And ever since they've made LaMelo a starter, they've won a lot more games, and that's propelled their movement up the table. But the one trade that we're going to talk about is Andre Drummond trade. The big problem with Andre Drummond is that his salary is about $28 million, and there's not a lot of centers in the league that have that salary, or any players in the league. Well, there are players in the league who have that salary, but it's a matching that's going to be an issue. For instance, we were talking about Brooklyn. The only other team that can do it. There are two teams that were talking. Toronto, who need a center. Aaron Baines hasn't worked out. Yuta Watanabe is great, but is good, but he's not like the elite level that they had with Gasol and what is it? Gasol and Serge Ibaka. Remember, they started the season with Alex Len, who came from Atlanta and went to Toronto, and had Aaron Baines, who came from Phoenix. Now, Aaron Baines is there. It's not giving them as much production, and he's like a stretch five, which is great, like a Marc Gasol, but he isn't Marc Gasol. And then you've got Alex Len, who they thought could be Serge, but isn't. And then they found, obviously, the Japanese man, Yuta Watanabe, who's a great guy, doing the job. Chris Boucher is an interesting one because he's doing a really, really great job at the five, even though he's a four. But they do need a proper center and presence there. The matching of the salaries for Toronto is the problem. And I think that's why this deal might not work out for Toronto, because that's what we heard. Toronto will need for Cleveland to buy him out of his contract or stretch his contract to make it easier in terms of a chunk perspective for years. So if you stretch his contract, you effectively take the $28 million and you divide it over, 3 or 4 years, and it makes it easier for you then to trade the player on, but you still have the dead cap in the following years that's that cap hold that happens. And that happened, I think, when the Lakers traded for Brook Lopez, Timofey Mozgov trade, when and Luol Deng. Luol Deng went to Lakers. He had a couple of injuries. They had to stretch his contract, and the Luol Deng contract only ended, I think, last season. Similar with the Nets with the Timothy Mozgov. The Nets got Mozgov from the Lakers, played a couple of seasons, wasn't that great, wasn't a good trade piece, but the salary was so high that they had to stretch it, just like what Charlotte are doing with Nick Batum. They've stretched Nick Batum's salary, which made Nick Batum an easy pickup for the Clippers because he got bought on a minimum veteran salary, even though he's getting some money from Charlotte, and he'll continue to get money from Charlotte, I think, for next season, this season and next season. But that's what Toronto are hoping Cleveland could do. But there's one other team that could do it, and that's the Celtics. The Celtics could do it because they don't have to send players to Cleveland to match, because they've got a $28 million trade exception from the sign and trade for Gordon Hayward with the Charlotte Hornets. So they've got a trade exception, which means they can get a player or players up until that amount. And then, so the question for the Celtics, who are they going to use that $28 million on? Do they use it entirely on Andre Drummond, or do they split it up and try to get a JJ Redick and try to get some other veteran pieces from other teams that can help bolster their team? So that's going to be something that's quite interesting for them going forward. But we're going to have to look and see how that unfolds. The trade deadline is coming up in March. But obviously now everyone's now headed to Atlanta to play the All-Star game. They're going to have a skills competition. They're trying to see if they can fit in a skills competition. They're going to have a slam dunk competition at halftime. So that's going to be really awesome to watch. And so we're going to see how that's going to unfold. But obviously the threat of the virus and containing the virus from everyone else, because players will still be allowed. Those who aren't going to the All-Star break or All-Star game will be allowed to go on holiday. They've already told everyone that they can't go anywhere south or east of Peru. So they've got pretty much everywhere, Cuba and some of the Caribbean islands, but they can't go further than Peru. So the league is really trying to contain the virus. This week we saw a little bit of an outbreak in the virus. Some games are postponed more than that happened in previous weeks. So we're still trying to get through that as America gets vaccinated and the world slowly starts to get to normal. But from my end, thank you very much for watching and listening to the Ball and All podcast. Please do like and subscribe on YouTube, and also follow on Anchor if you're an audio person like myself. And do share it as widely as possible. And until next week, enjoy the basketball. We've got Heat Lakers, you've got Jazz Clippers over the weekend. So that's going to be pretty awesome to watch. So thank you very much for watching, and have a lovely weekend and week. From myself and Paul, Lesale Kakakis.